The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. We're so pleased to have Delegate Chris Head with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, Woody.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come down. We know it is crossover day. Talk to us about the significance of crossover.
Well, today won't be quite as bad as yesterday because all we do today is vote on everything, and that doesn't take nearly as much time. You can't debate bills today, but the significance is that in Virginia, every state doesn't do this, but in Virginia, we have a date certain by which all bills have to be completed in their House of Origin. So all of the House bills have to be finished in the House, and all of the Senate bills have to be finished in the Senate by the end of the day today, and then they cross over to the other side. And some of them have come over early if they get there. The exception of that being the budget, because we do give ourselves enough time to continue to work on that, since that's the single most important piece of legislation that we ever work with. But all the others have to be done. So as things are working through the committee process, and particularly in a short session year like this one, you're really compressed in trying to get everything done. And the committees all had to finish work by Friday to get things on first read on Saturday, and then moved into second reading yesterday so that we could debate everything and hear everything that was there. So everything that was on first reading on Friday and Saturday were on second reading yesterday, and I think we had 187 pieces of legislation that had to be presented and discussed and debated on the floor. So we went in really early yesterday, went in at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and it was 7:30 roughly, 7:40, something like that when we left. I don't remember what exactly time it was, but it was may have been just before 7:30, I think, if I remember, when we finally adjourned last night. So a long day on the floor with a lot of discussion. And after a while, you just really, when somebody stands up to speak to a bill, we've got to do this as part of the process.
Sure.
We have to take the time to discuss everything. But when somebody stands up and it's, you've been on the floor for nearly 10 hours and they stand up to say, well, speaking to the bill, and you just sort of lay your head down on your desk and go, oh, please. But we have to do that. I mean, that is the process. And then you finish, and then today we will vote everything out, and then tomorrow will be pretty much like the first day of session again. We'll be in and out quickly for the next 3 days because everything from the Senate has to now plug into the House committees and start working the process again. So we almost have 2 complete sessions doing it this way, but it makes the process flow, and that's really important.
So I take it that, for instance, if a House bill doesn't pass today and there is not a Senate counterpart that comes over to the House, it's all over.
It's all over. Right, and that happens at any part in the process, and then even and it takes a long time to get legislation passed. You think about the little cartoon that ABC did years ago of "I'm Just a Bill,"
Yes.
and that really illustrates all of the steps, but I don't think it goes into the detail of just how hard it is to get a new law passed. There's a lot of steps in the process.
And of course now, I believe, bills that you have sponsored, for instance, that have made it to the Senate. And by the way, congratulations. I know there have been a number that have passed already.
We've had several. We've had more that didn't survive, but we did have several that got across.
But you're responsible to go over to the Senate and present that bill,
That's right.
Are you not?
That's right. So you go do exactly the same process again. The difference is that the committees now, you're never listening to your own legislation or presenting your own legislation. You're presenting only those bills that survived. So you have a little bit more time on the front side before crossover than you do on the back side, because the bills that die before they get to crossover, they don't have to be considered. So the number is reduced in the latter part of the session, but it's still compressed, and we've got very little runway to get it all finished.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about increased transparency, and I know both the House and the Senate have a feature now on the General Assembly website that allows a citizen, for example, to access the day's debates on the House and the Senate floor after the fact.
After the fact, and that's really what's better about it. You know, we've done live streaming for a long time, since way before I got here, but now you can go immediately after and watch the entire session, and you can even search by bill number or by your delegate or senator's name and look up where they're going to be in the process if they've stood up and said something. So if you want to see what your legislator actually says or doesn't say on the floor, and with 100 of us there, most days you don't speak, but when you do speak, you need to know what's being said and what they really think. That's been really, really good, and it's allowed us to also lift that out and connect that in with social media. If you're trying to tell constituents, you need to hear what was said by this person or what I said. You're able to lift that out and then promote that. And I think the transparency on that level is really, really great and connects us with our constituency. Also this year, I'm doing something a little different. I haven't done my video for this week, but I started this year, in addition to the weekly email newsletter updates that I send out, I've been making a weekly video
I've seen
that
those.
I've posted
They're
out
good.
on Facebook and out through my email list. Just shooting those with my iPad myself and just real simple, but getting those out there because people need to know what's going on. Every campaign season, I marvel at the level of disconnect that people have and not feeling like they can really get to know the people that are representing them or even what our job is. And that's really disturbing. So trying to get this out there just for people to have the opportunity to see what we really do and why it's important that you know who's here and what our job is and how we can help you.
Now that technology has yet to filter down, so to speak, to the committee and subcommittee level, although there are a couple of legislators who initiated that on their own, and there's a group
that's been
now.
videotaping all of the committees and subcommittees and doing live streaming of that as well. And that's if it's done the right way, that's fine.
Yes.
I get a little concerned when the attempt is to zero in and catch every private conversation that's going on. Because sometimes questions and back and forth as you're digging through information can be lifted and taken out of context. And both sides of the aisle have operatives that will do that, and that's problematic. And none of us that are here like that. You've got to be careful with that sort of thing. But I think it's on the other side of that argument is that being transparent. All of our committees are open anyway. The public can come in and sit down and listen to any of them. And I wish more people would come just to watch what goes on here because it really is a fascinating process. And we work through so much legislation thoroughly. I mean, you vet the things, you ask the questions, you talk about it, you discuss it, and then you vote. It's nice to see, and I get feedback from constituents all the time that come for the first time and watch it and go, wow, you guys really do a lot of stuff while you're here. So.
And of course, that's why the subcommittee process is so important because most of the work is done at that level.
Absolutely.
If you can't get out of the subcommittee, you're not going anywhere.
Right, and if you get out unopposed out of the subcommittee, you may very well sail all the way through. But that's where exactly all of the discussions in those subcommittee meetings can get long.
And of course, that all may change. This is the last year in this General Assembly building.
Yes,
when
it
the
is.
new one is completed, there may be that technology available at that time.
Well, and I know there's going to be some addition as we move down to the Pocahontas building as they're redoing this one. And I think we'll be down there, 4 years? So that will be, and also with the membership that changes every year
Yes.
as it does, it's going to be interesting to see what the bodies look like when they come back up the hill. So.
Now, we were talking earlier because you're a member of Health, Welfare, and Institutions. We were talking in particular about the aging of America and the aging of the Commonwealth and the potential for more financial burdens given the fact that we don't have a cure yet for Alzheimer's, do we?
No, we don't, and it's one of the motivating factors for my running for the House of Delegates was in the industry. I'm an owner of a home care company, so that's the industry that I work in, and it's very concerning that you've got, starting in 2012, I think was the year that we had the first of the baby boomers turning 65. They are turning 65 at a rate of about 11,000 a day. The rule of thumb has always been 10,000. It's really closer to 11,000, actually slightly more than that. But that's a pretty rapid number of aging people. Well, the thing is, if you turn 65, the actuarial tables will tell you that you are going to live to be probably 85. That's your life expectancy at that point, or longer. And the problem is that means that 20 years later, you're 85, but 15 years later, obviously, you're 80, and at age 80, 50% of the people develop Alzheimer's or some
50%.
related dementia. 50%. And so what that means is that we are now about 12 years away from having over 5,000 new Alzheimer's patients in this nation every single day. And it's terribly expensive, terribly burdensome on families, and there is no cure. There are some great promising things coming. Some of the research, interestingly enough, is being done in Roanoke at the Virginia Tech Carilion Research
Institute, the Brain Center.
The Brain Center, that's right. And you know, the city manager in Roanoke City, Chris Morrill, I think coined the phrase that we're turning Roanoke from a train city to a brain city. So that's a great thing. But we gotta get on that, and we've also got to be looking at all the resources. Just aging in general, people are living longer and are healthier, but we still have a mindset that retirement should be geared to a number of 65 years. 65 was selected as a retirement age by Otto von Bismarck in Germany back in the late 19th century.
Purely an arbitrary number.
Well, actually, no, it was because life expectancy was 62 at that time for the people. So there were very few retirees at that, and so they set up their pension plans to be, if you make it all the way to the end and you're really, really old, then we'll carry you through for a few years. But now you got people that are getting on Social Security at 65 and they're living to 100, and it was never intended to be 35 or 40 years that people could draw this stuff. So the numbers don't work anymore. Plus the fact that you've got people that are vibrant. I mean, used to be when I was a child, people began to look old and act old when they were in their mid 50s or early 60s, and now you have Hollywood stars. Helen Mirren, for example, was photographed in a bikini on the beach at 66 years old, 67
wow.
years old, and still not only confident enough to do that, but still in shape to be able to do that and look good. And she is there. That would never have happened 40 years ago. People are younger in their older age, and we've got to be prepared for that, and then give opportunities for second careers or continued careers. The companies have to start changing their mindset about putting people out to pasture because wisdom comes with age as well. And so we've got a lot to deal with as we're moving down the road, and we've really got to have those conversations.
Now, you talked about the potential costs. I think there's a lot of confusion about what government programs may cover long-term care. There are very few, are there
Well,
not?
unless you are indigent, there are virtually none. If you're a veteran, there are some programs for veterans benefits, but people oftentimes assume that long-term care for them is going to be covered by Medicare. Medicare doesn't cover that. Medicaid in some cases does, but people don't want to be on Medicaid long-term care unless they have to be.
Yeah, you underline the word indigent. You have to basically, if you have any assets, you have to spend those assets down.
You got to be broke. I mean, you got to have nothing left to qualify for Medicaid.
Order of magnitude, what are we talking about if one has to go into a long-term care facility monthly?
On the low end, $3,500. On the high end, north of $10,000 a month.
And it's very difficult to get insurance for long-term care these days, is it not?
Well, it's out there. The policies that were originally sold as nursing home policies are no more because there was reform in that, and they were not good policies at all. They were a lot of people bought policies early in that process and ended up not being able to take advantage of them. The long-term care insurance that my wife and I carry, you couldn't get today because it was too feature-rich. Very, very expensive, though, as well. Then you also have the policies that are out there that give you some coverage and some flexibility. Another thing that people ought to be looking at is the option of convertible life insurance policies. And we're seeing some of those come along now that I think would help. But people just need to be thinking about it and looking into it and making plans for that like they would for buying their first home or sending their kids to college. You need to be thinking about how you're going to pay for things at the end of life.
Speaking of people in a long-term care facility, so to speak, the Commonwealth is still dealing with closing down some of the training centers, I think?
Yeah. And I mean, we don't have enough time to go into that this morning, Woody, because that's still I have been opposed to that in the way that it's being done in a lot of cases. There are needs for moving people to community to community life and community organizations, and in some cases that works better. But in some cases it just doesn't, and particularly in situations where we've got people who've literally never lived anywhere else in their adult life and are now senior adults, and they won't know what to do. I'm very concerned with that. But largely that ship has sailed, and we're seeing how that's going to roll out, and we'll cover that. I think we've dealt with a lot of those issues in the past few years. The other thing is the need for psychiatric beds in our psychiatric hospitals for the geriatric population, because geriatric psychiatry is a very narrow field, and we had the big debate last year with the budget. They were wanting to close Catawba Hospital out in the Roanoke Valley, and we ended up saving that because it would have been a real problem. There were a lot of people there that there literally would have been no place else to put them. And we've got to be looking at doing more rather than closing that down to help take care. And Alzheimer's is a part of that. So.
You mentioned the Research Institute in Roanoke. How important is that, as well as Carilion Medical College?
Well, from the Research Institute, from an economic development standpoint, is probably the single biggest thing that's happened in Roanoke in the last 50 or 100 years, I think, because the things that are being done there, the level of research, the world-class scientists that we have coming in from all over the globe to work there under Dr. Mike Friedlander, who has a reputation. When you go anywhere in the country and talk with anybody in research fields and mention the name Mike Friedlander, and they sit up and they go, oh, Dr. Friedlander. And go, he has quite a reputation around the world. He's well known and well respected. And we've got a lot of great people coming into the Valley, but the work that they're doing in brain health in all sorts of directions. I mean, everything from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's to how people learn, and the benefits of early childhood education and staying with those programs. Even Craig and Sharon Ramey, the doctors Ramey, are both a part of that, and they've been working on a project for decades with a cohort that they started with in elementary school, and they've got some real good empirical data to show what we can do and what the differences are with absolute irrefutable evidence now. So all of this stuff is happening in Roanoke, and it's fantastic.
Now, what about rail to Roanoke? I understand that may come to fruition this year.
Sometime by the time we talk next year, we should have Amtrak back in Roanoke, and that's also a good economic development piece. It's not for our locals to take the train to go to Washington. It will bring people in and carry them away again, gives business a better opportunity. From a tourism standpoint, it makes us more accessible. It really will do well. And because the train will run directly to Washington, you'll be able to go right by Washington Reagan National Airport, and there's a stop very close to that airport, stop actually in Baltimore Washington Airport. So BWI will be accessible from there as well. Makes it a little easier to get in and out of Roanoke, and that helps us from a business standpoint.
So the New River Valley is doing fairly well. What about Botetourt County, the portion that you represent?
Well, Botetourt County is booming as well. We've got a lot of good things going on, tying in with the whole area from an economic development standpoint. We've got all of the localities working together, and that's something that didn't happen again years ago, but it's happening a lot now, and that's a great thing. We've gotten some great announcements that have come in. Last year we announced Eldor Corporation. They'll be opening up soon and hiring some really wonderful high-paying jobs, a lot of them. We also have Ballast Point. The big announcement last year was Deschutes Brewery, but we've got Ballast Point actually bringing in a bigger operation. They were just fairly low-key about it. They didn't want to start tooting their horn until they were actually there. And my understanding is they'll be up and running before Deschutes ever gets started. So it's a great thing.
What about Go Virginia? Any impact yet, especially from the business community? Because I think that's the core element of it.
Well, it is, and we're not seeing any impact yet. It's still in its infancy, but the region has actually been pulled together, and the region that we're in, which I think is wonderful, goes from Appomattox County all the way to Pulaski. So we're dealing with a big region, and you've got Liberty University on one end, you've got Virginia Tech on the other end, and then you've got Roanoke right there as sort of the axle of the wheel in the middle. And that means that everything in that area should be able to give a lot of energy to economic development by working together, and all of the localities are on board. And that's, again, it's a grand thing.
See, VDEP has a new director, I believe. It was harshly criticized by JLARC recently. The marketing arm
Yes,
of the state wasn't doing a great job.
Well, weren't marketing particularly well, and there are a lot of us that have been concerned about that. I think finally we got the lid torn off of that, and a lot of exposure. I think you're going to see some different ways of operating over there. We'll give them time to see what's going on now before we pass judgment or pass blessing as well. So.
Well, let's talk about some of the successes you've already had this session. I know you had a bill dealing with franchisees and whether people who work for them are employees or not.
Right, that's a bill we actually carried last year as well, and it passed last year, both houses. But the direction for that is that it just simply states that the employees of a franchisee, like I am with my company as a franchisee, they are my employees, and they're my employees only. They are not co-employees of the franchisor unless there is some particular arrangement to make that different. Just in a normal franchisor-franchisee relationship, there's not a co-employment situation. That's critically important to make sure that those stay separately. And we had a lot of support both last year and this year. The International Franchise Association, the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, every business group was behind the bill and supportive of it. Again, it passed both houses of the legislature last year, and Governor McAuliffe vetoed it. We were one vote short of being able to override his veto. I've had meetings with him. I've actually got an amendment in my pocket, haven't put on it yet, that would address the concerns that he laid out last year. It will be interesting to see if we're able to get that through the Senate and have that amendment on there, if that really was what he was concerned about or not. That will remain to be seen, and we'll find out if we put it before him again. Hopefully this year we will have addressed his concerns and be able to get that out and have him sign this into law.
So what are some of your concerns relative to the state of the law now as it relates to franchise employees and the organizations that support your bill?
Well, it's less of a problem now than it was this time last year because we've had a change in administration in Washington. The previous administration was very much in favor of severing those or building those bridges rather than keeping them separate, because it would allow for more collective bargaining and some other restrictions. It would also, the real problem is if you have a labor dispute that's going on and someone does something wrong in California. If there were a co-employer relationship across the entire network, imagine that a McDonald's franchise owner in Virginia was suddenly penalized because of something that a franchise owner in California did with his employees. That's what we want to keep these separate, because franchisees are individually owned businesses.
Tuition assistance grant legislation. I know you have something dealing with
Well,
that.
that's one of the ones that didn't make it through. But the bill that I had on that simply said that if you're getting TAG grant money, which is the money that we give to students to go to private institutions in Virginia, rather than our public institutions. The bill simply said that in order to qualify for that, you had to meet the qualifications that you have currently in place, and that you have to state in your student handbook or some similar publication that you would guarantee the rights of free speech and expression to the students that are enrolled. Received a lot of opposition from those private colleges and universities, which should make people begin to wonder what they're afraid of. But
So in other words, honor the First Amendment.
honor the First Amendment. That's all we wanted to have it done. So it did not make it out of committee, but
That's all right. I'm sure you'll keep trying. You have some information dealing with the income tax for individual and small businesses, I believe?
well, that again is one that didn't make it through. But what we were trying to address was the concerns that we have from businesses around the country, around the Commonwealth, that we frequently roll out these economic development programs, and you mentioned VEDP earlier.
Yes.
We roll out these programs to bring in brand new large businesses, and we will give them tax breaks and tax incentives and tax credits to bring the business here and create new jobs. But we don't do anything to take existing businesses and give them an incentive to grow and create new jobs. So this was a tax credit that was designed for that. Getting a tax credit through this year was a tall order because of the state of the budget and the budget shortfall that we've got. But we'll keep presenting that because I think it's important for us to take a look at that.
And a constitutional amendment you have dealing with the powers of the General Assembly.
Woody, this is, I've carried this one before as well, but we passed out of the House last night and are on the way over to the Senate. We've got a better shot at getting this all the way through this year, and it'll be the first pass on a constitutional amendment. That would, of course, have to pass this year, then pass again next year after there had been an election without any changes to the legislation, and then would go out to the voters on the ballot in November to be finally passed. But what it says is that the majority vote of both houses would be able to suspend any administrative rule or regulation. The reason for this is that we frequently pass legislation, and the agencies that we work with, and this was really shocking when I started seeing this as a trend. It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't even happen a significant amount of time for most people on first glance, but if it happens at all, it's a problem. That we pass a law and then they just choose to ignore it. They don't do anything with it. Or they'll promulgate regulations in those agencies that really don't have anything to do with the intent of the legislation that we set forth. If a bureaucracy doesn't like something, they find a way not to do it. And we don't really have any power to come back and say, you're gonna do this. We're gonna change what you're doing here and take away your authority altogether if you don't get it right. This would give us the power to do that. You so often hear from citizens, constituents call all the time and say, why does this have to be this way? What can you do to help me? And sometimes we can help. This would just give us a little more opportunity to pull those bureaucrats back into check.
Guess what? We've got about a minute left, and the budget is a huge deal, but I know that you're really focused on state employee wages, especially as that relates to our state police and deputy sheriffs.
I'm very, very glad that that was left in. We had not been able to keep up with where we needed to, particularly for those in law enforcement. And it's going to be great to be able to give them a little something. It's still, I don't think, is nearly enough, but it's what we can do right now.
Because we're losing a lot of state police to
other states, local jurisdictions and other states. And it's becoming increasingly hard. And that's an area we've got to have good people doing this.
Thank you for being here.
Woody,
Appreciate
thank you for
your
having me.
time. Delegate Chris Head, good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.